What did you guys get for number 1? Anybody get anything else? No? Okay, let's see if it's negative 24. So it gave you x equals 1, y equals 4, so we're going to plug that into this equation. We'll get 1 minus 4 cubed plus 3. 1 minus 4 would be negative 3, and we're going to cube that number. What it means by cubed is multiply by itself 3 times. So I'm just going to do that up there. Negative 3 times negative 3 would be positive 9, times negative 3 would be negative 27, is what you should have gotten there. And then plus 3 would be negative 24. So good job. The answer is negative 24. For the second one, now we're solving for x. They don't give it to us. We have to figure it out. I'm going to start by distributing that 5 to both of those terms. Bring it all down. 5 times x is 5x. 5 times 3 is 15. Not it. Thanks. I think it's Edith. Thank you, Edith. Okay. So we get 3x equals 5x plus 12. Divide both sides by negative 2. And x equals negative 6. Is that what you guys got?
I got positive 7, but 5.
Okay, and the third one, some people had questions about that inequality, the greater than symbol right there. This is actually something that is coming up in our next lesson, not even this one, the next one, which is next week. But I thought you could do it, so I left it on there. You solve this just like you would an equation. The only difference is if you divide by a negative number or multiply by a negative number, you change the sign in the other direction. But that doesn't happen in this example, so I thought you'd be good. Did anybody get the answer?
X is greater than 5.
C. Thank you. Okay, x is greater than 5. I'm going to quickly go through the steps. If you didn't get that, here are the steps to get that. I'm going to add 9 to both sides. And we get x is greater than 5. Okay. Everybody got it down? Apparently I was writing too fast in my last class, so if I'm writing too fast, let me know. Lesson 1-4, we are solving absolute value equations. You have probably worked with absolute value before. I believe this lesson takes it one step further than you've ever seen before. It starts out really simple, where we have an equation here. I'm going to zoom in. And it tells us x equals negative 2, so all we're doing is plugging in that negative 2 and then solving this equation. Remember, absolute value makes everything positive. If you have a negative 5 within the absolute value symbol, it would be positive 5. If you have a positive 5 within the absolute value, it just equals 5. Absolute value by definition is the distance from 0. Distance can't be negative, so therefore absolute value symbols come into play. Yes?
So if it was like 4x minus 3, it would just be 4x plus 3.
Yeah, we'll get you would solve what's in the absolute value symbol first, and if it's a negative number, then you would turn it positive. Okay. So here we have x equals negative 2. We're going to plug that in for x. And then minus 3.5. Anytime I can turn a fraction into a decimal, I do it. You should as well, just because they're easier to work with and less mistakes will happen. So minus 3.5, I'm going to turn it into minus 3.5. And then solve what's in the brackets first. 4 times negative 2 is negative 8 plus 3. Absolute value of negative 5 minus 3.5. Once you get to this part, now you're going to turn that negative 5 into a positive. So positive 5 minus 3.5 equals 1.5. And that is your answer, 1.5 Or if all the answer choices were in fractions, you might see 3.5, or 3/2, or 1 1/2. If for whatever reason you got your answer in a decimal and then all the answer choices were in fractions, just go through those fractions and figure out which one matches. So for example, if the answer choice was 3/2, I just do 3 divided by 2. I should get the decimal and then see if that matches my decimal. And that's how I would figure it out. Okay, so here we are solving absolute value equations. There are some steps, and they're written out here. We'll quickly go through them. Question?
Do you have to write the decimal on the fraction, or can you just write a 1?
It'll be multiple choice, so just choose the correct answer. It could be in decimal, it could be in fraction. I was just showing you both. And that it's the same way on the SATs too. Just be prepared for either. A lot of times I like to do the solving in decimals, and then if all the answer choices are in fractions, just divide out the fraction and see which one matches your decimal. So solving absolute value equations, we have to get the absolute value by itself. So just kind of talking about the steps, here we have two different examples. This one has the absolute value all by itself already, and this one doesn't. So for this one, we'd have to get the absolute value by itself before we do any of the other steps. As far as the words, separate into two equations with or in the middle. I'll show you what that means, and then solve. So here we have absolute value of 3x plus 2 equals 4. We are going to set 3x plus 2 equal to 4, or it could be equal to negative 4. 3x plus 2 equal to negative 4. So we're actually going to solve two equations. And now we just solve like we normally would. So we get 2/3 or negative 2. And the way you would see this represented in the answer choices would be in brackets like this, 2/3, negative 2. So the answer could be either of those. Yes.
And for the side that doesn't have absolute value brackets, if it was like two numbers, like 4 minus.
We'll get to that in one of the other examples. Yeah. Okay, so number 3, we're going to do the same thing, but before we do that, we have to get the absolute value by itself on one side of the equation. So subtract 3 from both sides. Then I'm going to divide both sides by 2. I get the absolute value of x plus 9 equals 2. Once I get the absolute value all by itself, then I need to do the either or. So x plus 9 either equals positive 2 or it equals negative 2. And then from here, solve for x. And you get that. Okay. Yes.
Why did you subtract the 3 first and not divide by
It's easier.
Can you do it either way, or is it just like...
You get fractions. Yeah, you could divide, but you'd also have to. I don't think you could do it the other way.
I'm just asking because I thought you like divide first and then subtract.
No, not when you're solving equations. You would get the constant over on the other side first. I don't think it would work the other way. We could try it, but not today. Okay. So, for the next page, now we're going to look at extraneous solutions. So what this means is sometimes when you get these two answers, if you plug it back in, it won't actually work. So then you have to throw one of the answers out. So this is a little bit more work. What I would do as you're going through your homework problems is if all the answer choices have two answers, then don't go through the second step. If the answer choices that you have might have like one number, like just -7, or it might have this 0, meaning that none of the solutions work, then you have to go through this extra step. So look at the answer choices. If you see the two, only two options, then you can stop here and just find your answer. If you see these, some of these other options, then you'll have to go through this extra step. So we're doing same step here, but just adding a step. I want you to draw a line in the middle here, just to leave yourself room for that second step. Okay, so first step is to get the absolute value by itself, and it already is. And now we're going to go through that example where you're saying, okay, what if it, were you trying to work ahead? Is that what you're asking? Okay, so now we're going to do the either or. We'll have 5x minus 2 equals positive 7x plus 14. And then the or situation would be all of this negative, or multiply it all by -1. And then we'll solve for x. Yes, you're right. Good catch. Okay, now that we have those two answers, we have to go ahead and plug those back into the original to see if they work. So now that I have -8, I'm plugging it into this. So I'll have absolute value of 5 times -8 minus 2 equals 7 times -8 plus 14. And then we will solve this. So this solved to 42 equals -42. That is false. That does not equal. So therefore, this answer cannot be an answer. This is extraneous. And then we need to test the next one.
Why is it plus 14?
Because we're plugging it into the original. We're not plugging it into that. We're plugging it into the original. So 7 does equal 7, so this is true. This works. So this would be our one solution. Yes,
We can always do one solution because
because of the absolute value. Sometimes it does work though, for both. What do you mean?
like you know if there's an absolute value, of absolute bracket value, whatever, the other side has to be multiplied by -1.
But it could be, I don't know what you're asking. We could test it, but there is situations where both work. But there's also situations where only one work or 0 work. Okay. Next one, number 5. We're going to go through the same steps, but for this one, we need to get absolute value by itself first. Then I need to get rid of this coefficient, so I'm going to divide this by 2, and then divide each one of these by 2. Now that I have the absolute value by itself, I'm going to do the either or. So it'll be x plus 1 equals 2x minus 2. And then multiply all this by a -1 would be x plus 1 equals -2x plus +2. Then from here, go ahead and solve for x. Okay, so once I got to this point, if I looked at the answer choices and there were only options for 2 answers, I'd be looking for this in the answer choices. If there was some answer choices with only 1 or 0, then you have to go through and check it. In this case, we are going to go through and check it. So instead of plugging it into this complicated equation, I'm going to plug it into the simplified version that I made. So taking the simplified version, x plus 1. Actually, I'm just going to plug in that 3 right there. I should be working in pencil, but pencil doesn't show up as well on the screen. So, okay, so I'm plugging in x equals 3. And I get 4 equals 4. That is true. So therefore, this one does work. And we have to see if the other one works. So again, plugging it into this one. Okay, and then we have 2/3 minus 2. Some of you might be able to do that in your head to get negative 1 1/3. Some of you might not be able to do that. To subtract the fractions, 2/3 minus 2 over 1. Make a common denominator. Get negative 4/3. Or negative 1 1/3, which does not equal positive 1 1/3. So therefore, this one does not work. It is false, extraneous. So in your answer choices, you would just be looking for 3. Okay, so like I said, most of the problems won't need this amount of work. There are quite a few problems like this where you're just plugging in a variable and solving. There are some like this. If all the answer choices have 2 answers, just look for the 2 answers. You don't have to test it. If some of the answer choices have 1 or 0, then go ahead and test it and see what works and what doesn't. We have 22 minutes left in class. Because the internet is kind of shoddy, I'm going to have you use your phones, but I need everyone actually on there doing their homework. So I don't want to see like several people not. So get on your phones, get your homework done. If you finish your homework, work on Khan Academy. Yes. Yes, you may.